Hey Braden. Okay, so I've looked through the internet and I haven't found a lot of great, really introductory videos for how Krita works, so I'm going to show you the basics to get you started. So when you first open up Krita, this is what you're going to see, and what you're going to want to do is go to New File, and then what you need to do right now is determine what the size of the file is. So in pixels, what the width and the height of the file is. You don't need to worry about a lot of what's going on in this UI here, but basically what I would say is select under dimensions, select predefined, and go to something like A4 300 ppi. That's an example file. A4 is actually exactly the same as an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and 300 ppi means 300 pixels per inch, which is a way of saying when you print it out on a piece of paper, every inch will have 300 pixels across. That's how high detailed it's going to be. At the end of the day, it ends up being 2480 by 3508 if it's tall in portrait mode. If you need it to be in landscape mode, meaning wider, you flip it there. So you got your portrait in your landscape mode. I think maybe for characters, maybe you want in portrait mode, you can decide. Anything else that's going on down here, don't worry about it. You just select that size and hit create. If this isn't what you wanted, you can make this a different dimension and you'll be fine. So now you got a file here, and the very, very basics of what Krita is it's a bunch of layers. Think of it like clear sheets of acetate back in the day when they would paint for cartoons. They would lay down a clear sheet and draw on it, and then lay down another clear sheet on top of it and draw on it, and that's exactly what Krita is. So each of these layers in this stack over here has this little eyeball on top of it that lets you turn the layer on and off. So on this paint layer, if I draw something, I can then turn that layer on and off. The way you do this is you would add another layer. You go down here and press the plus button, and now that you have paint layer 2, you can actually double click on that and call this, top layer or something, and then you can draw something new on that. And if you want to just hide that layer, you can see what's going on there. Really basic idea here as well. Within this whole section of the window, you could hit delete. I'm going to trash can that guy. There's a lot of options here that we can get into, but that's the real basics. Different layers allowing you to paint. On the very, very bottom is your background layer, which in this case you can kind of see the preview here. It's white, and this means it's locked, meaning nobody can touch it. It's a locked layer. If I was to hide this thing and start painting, nothing's going to happen. So the basics are you want to have a paint layer, you want to have it visible, and then you want to draw your stuff on it. So how do you draw? Well, over here on the left is the different tools that you can use. The main tool you're going to want to start by using is this guy here, the freehand brush tool. You can either bring your mouse over and click on it, or if you just hover over top of this, you can see B, freehand brush tool B. If you just hit B, it'll select that tool. Then over here are all the brushes. What are you going to do? What are you going to select? There's many, many brushes to choose from. In this, if you hit all the brushes, boom, look at all these things. There's a billion brushes that all do very, very different things. Some of them are just a straight line, like what we were just using there. We select this pencil brush, so it does this. On your tablet, it'll probably be pressure sensitive, so that you can, if you press lightly, it'll draw lightly. Right now, I'm using a mouse, so it's 1-to-1. You can select some things that do some interesting kind of smudging, some interesting smudging effects, which we'll get to later. But the basics I want to show you here is size up top. You can change the size of what your brush is going to be. Well, that's a big one, right? Or you can drag this down and make it smaller. You can also do that through the square bracket keys up and down, holding that. Or if you hold Shift and left click and drag up and down, it'll change the size. Okay, so left, hold down Shift, press the left click, and then it'll change the size. This other side over here, opacity, means basically how strong is it going to be. Right now it's 100% opacity, so anything I draw is totally, you can't see through it. But if I was to set this down at 50% opacity, it's like half strong. And you can see here, I'll make my brush a little bigger. You can see one stroke is kind of that thick, and another stroke on top is even darker. And these things start stacking up on top of each other. And that's a really good way of like making something that is soft shaded. You could draw, soft shaded things like that and start layering those strokes on top of each other. Anytime you draw, the standard commands of like undo, Control Z, starts to let you undo brush strokes, that kind of idea. I'm going to take my layer and just delete it right now. So I'm going to make a brand new layer. And in there, you can select this brush. Well, you choose a different brush. Why don't you choose a paintbrush? Okay, this paintbrush is sort of an angled brush, and I'm going to make it a bit bigger. With your pressure-sensitive tablet, you're going to be able to make really interesting effects with these. Some of them, with the pressure, is going to be how opaque it is, the opacity. Some of them with the pressure, it's going to change the size. So the harder you press, the bigger it's going to get. Some of them it's going to do it at the same time. If I double click on this, oh, it didn't do anything. That's weird. I thought that would open that up. So that's the fundamentals, the really, really basic stuff. Come in here, make sure you have a layer active, and then you can begin painting. Now, over here is the color wheel. This color wheel, it functions like a, this is basically how you select things. So within this triangle, you have, I guess the easiest way to describe this is around the outside here is your hue selection. So that's the basic color. If the rainbow was incredibly vibrant, you just spun around this color wheel, which color you're going to select. You got reds, you got purples, blues, greens down here. And so whatever color you end up selecting, that's my hue. Now, within this triangle, there's two other main features that make up a color. Hue, which is the color. You've got your saturation, which is the color super vibrant or is it gray? So somewhere between saturation, fully saturated as red, and fully desaturated gray is your saturation. And then you've got your value, which is a funny thing up and down. This between white and black is value. So it's a funny way of mapping it onto this triangle, but your saturation is this bottom peak to the middle, and your value is between black and white. So something with high saturation, something with a hue of red with a high value but no saturation is going to be white, and something with absolutely no value at all is going to be black. So hue, saturation, value. What color it is, how prominent is the color, and how much lightness or darkness is in it. Hue, saturation, value. That's the basics of how computer color works. So you go in here, select a color, select basically what the tone is, what you want, and then you can start drawing stuff. Now there's some shortcuts within here. I'll get to what I just did in a second, where you can select the previous colors that you've generated. You can, after you set something over here and you paint with it, it'll show up in this like quick select menu here, so you can go back and grab things that you liked. So I'll just go around here and make a few different colors and paint some stuff, and boom, those colors come back to me. I'm able to draw on them again. Okay, so that's the really basic idea of what the color wheel is. And within this color wheel, within any of these things, there's all kinds of options that you can do. Funny enough, when I'm recording, there's actually this recording bar over top here, so I can't really see what I'm doing. So I'm doing my best guess. So select a layer you want to paint on, select a tool you want to use, select the opacity, select the size of the brush, and select the color. That is the basics of what you're going to need to do to get started. Then, once you've done things, you want to go File, Save As, and write out your file. It'll give you, I don't know what's going on here, once it comes in, it'll give you a place to save it. And you can say test drawing, test Braden. How about that? And I'm going to make mine version 1, test Braden V001. The type of document will be a .kra, Krita document. And then you hit save. And what that is, that's not a drawing. What that is it's a digital file that tells it what all the layers are, what all the brush strokes are, all these different things. That's what you just saved. If you ultimately want to save your drawing out, you can go File, Export, and once it loads up, you could export this thing as a JPEG, let's say. And what that's going to do is it's going to flatten this whole thing down into one just JPEG image. And